So I just hope I do this episode justice, and we'll see how it goes. What's up, guys? My name is Anna, like the princess, but with only one N. This is On Site, and for our next stop, we're heading to Virginia, where Pocahontas would have lived in the early 1600s. If you haven't seen our music video for Colors of the Wind yet, you can check it out here. This episode was tough for a lot of reasons. This movie came out in 1995, and basically this is what happens. So Pocahontas is a young Native American woman whose father, the chief, wants her to get married to this guy who is way too boring for her. Meanwhile, some colonists come and they're really ready to find some gold because they don't know that there isn't any. Among them is John Smith. He and Pocahontas fall in love after she teaches him to appreciate nature. Then the colonists and the Native Americans go to war. John Smith is about to die. Pocahontas saves him, but he gets shot. Very violent Disney. He has to go back to London for medicine, and she decides to stay with her people. So that's the Disney version. So that's very basic. So I was very eager to learn more. Unfortunately, no one was eager to tell me. I reached out to the local Pamunkey Reservation, Jamestown Island, everywhere I could think of, but Pocahontas seemed to be a relatively touchy subject, which, fair. Eventually, we did find somebody to talk to.
We're on our way to our interview in Williamsburg.
So we headed down to Williamsburg to talk to history professor Dr. Adrian Petty to learn more about the Pocahontas controversy.
Hi, I'm Adrian Petty. I'm an associate professor of history at the College of William and Mary.
In trying to find an interview here in Virginia, I was met with a lot of pushback and hesitancy that's super understandable, but kind of unexpected on my part not being from here. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible that you could have found this kind of pushback in a lot of different places in the United States when it comes to the representation of Native Americans, because it's such a contested history. From the vantage point of Americans trying to find something out of that early American history to take pride in, or to tell ourselves that it wasn't as bad as the history kind of suggests that it was, the Pocahontas story does work for people who want to believe that, you know, the United States as an experiment has been a good thing. But if we want to come to terms with the cost of what took place during those early years of the American colonies, then it's not such a pretty story. The history of Native Americans, as you know, is one of incredible dispossession and conquest. It's one of, Native Americans really being pushed out of their own lands and having to make certain accommodations to the eventual creation of the United States. And so it's a very painful history in that kind of way. I suspect that you experience some pushback about this story because the Pocahontas story for the tribe that she was a member of really isn't probably the way that tribe might want to think of itself as a living people, as people who have kind of maintained and struggled against these kinds of incursions and dispossessions on their land. So just think of how incredible it is that all of these centuries later, the Pamunkey people still have their land and they still have sovereignty over it. And so for them, probably the story of Pocahontas isn't necessarily one that they would lead with in telling their own sense of themselves. For such a long time, Native Americans, like many other groups in the United States, haven't been in that position to present their own story in a way that reaches a broad swath of society. And then again, the resistance that you've experienced from the tribe itself, I'm kind of heartened by the fact that they're being protective of what remains of their culture and their future, because for so long Native American tribes have either been in a position of just having people extract from them and take from them. So that act of them actually preserving their culture is encouraging, even though it's not so great for a young scholar like you who just wants to understand more about the culture surrounding the film.
So that offered me a lot of perspective, but left me feeling very overwhelmed and anxious about how to proceed with the episode. This section of the trip is really making me like check myself. I love all Disney movies. Not all of them, but like I love a lot of Disney movies, and I love all the princess movies, and I just, I'm kind of doing this because I want to find a way to make them work for everyone. I guess I'm just wondering, like, where does this leave us with this movie? So I don't know, guys. The next day we decided to go to Jamestown. So as per suggestion from Adrian, we're at historic Jamestown. We couldn't do a lot of filming, but we did get to see their World of Pocahontas exhibit. I thought, like Dr. Petty said, it did a really great job of showing all sides of the story and kind of conveying how beneficial it was for the colonists to have Pocahontas, this Indian princess, to marry John Rolfe as she did and to convert to Christianity. It kind of showed that they could like civilize the natives or whatever. And we actually finally got to talk to somebody of Native American descent. It was so important to me to show that perspective in this video because, you know, it's about them. In a final attempt to get an interview, I reached out to the American Indian Association and they responded.
This is Warren Taylor. He works at Williamsburg and he grew up on the Pamunkey Reservation. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. The Pamunkey Indian Reservation is about an hour's drive away from here. Grew up there, raised in my own culture, and became quite familiar with, you say, Jamestown period history on into the colonial period to the 1700s, which is why I work now at Colonial Williamsburg. We're one of the largest tribes in Tidewater, Virginia. So if not most of all of Virginia, what is today's boundaries of Virginia. So we're the head of what is known today as the Powhatan Confederacy. And so most of the leaders, such as Powhatan, Akakoesko, Pocahontas, they all came from Pamunkey. So these Pamunkey bloodlines. Yeah, that's 400 years ago. Yeah. So it's been quite a while. And so since the 1700s, I would say that the Pamunkey people, for the most part, as a tribe and as a people, have really been keeping their head down, trying to retain their own cultures and their own life ways. Up until recently, when we've been, put back into the spotlight with federal recognition. We're working on establishing a government-to-government relation with the federal government, and also developing some benefit industry to benefit everybody within the tribe.
How do organizations like this, and I know you work at Williamsburg, so how do they work to make sure that they're portraying things historically accurately, especially with the local tribes?
Yeah, especially the place we're at now, Jamestown Island. It's based off of archaeological findings. It's a huge indication as to what those relationships, more so day-to-day, would look like. And I think that's pretty important.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if this is still standing, but I know in the past my tribe has had a relationship with Jamestown, Jamestown Island, the museum itself. There's a partnership there. So to have some of the first Pamunkey people at Jamestown representing Pamunkey people about 100 years.
Let's talk about Pocahontas.
As someone who studies history and portrays people of the past, as I have to know about Pocahontas, especially if people learn that I'm from a native Virginian tribe. I know a bit about her history. She was, from my understanding, pretty young. I think one of the most important things about Pocahontas that people miss out on is who her father was, Powhatan or Wahasanaka. She wasn't his only daughter. Being a matrilineal society, lineage attracted the women, and so all of his daughters, including Pocahontas, were going to be married off to enforce a power structure that was already existing before she was abducted by the Jamestown settlers. I would say that the story of Disney's Pocahontas is one that's suited for children. It romanticizes history to make it appealing. The actual story is not appealing, really. There's no real winners.
Right. So
if some people say that, yeah, it established a peace for a couple of years, but as soon as she died, that peace ceased to exist, and they went right back to war. Pocahontas herself is definitely someone that's one of the most famous Native American peoples that exist today. So people around the world know who she is. So, and it's because of Disney. So while that grants some recognition, I guess you can say like long term, it does put Native peoples on a map in a way that a lot of Native American peoples don't want to be recognized.
I see. Yeah.
So because that's not true history, it's not what really happened.
So I guess that leads me to my next question of how filmmakers can better portray Native American characters.
For quite a while now, there's been a push by the Native communities in North America as a whole to have actual Native peoples in films, being consulted as actually cultural advisors to what they should look like, what they should wear, how they should act. A great example of that is a television series called Jamestown. It's airing in England, so on Sky One Network, but I've been going over there for 2 years now. They consult Native American experts as to what the native towns should look like, how they should act, what they should be doing, how they're dressed, painted, and so on and so on. There's still some faults in films today, but I would say it is getting better. So actually having Native peoples involved in the film project itself about Native peoples.
Right. So in terms of the Disney movie, how do we move forward? Is that something that people should stop watching? It should it be like taken off Netflix? Should kids not watch it? Or is it something to just to like understand what it is and like take that into consideration when viewing it?
I don't think people should stop watching that movie. And this is more so like, I guess, from the parents, the children that watch it. If you're interested in that movie, or your child is, then to actually maybe take them to a place like Jamestown, or some other place that is covering history, the actual real history of that time period. My personal opinion is the fact of the matter is that movie's out there. It's pretty involved into mainstream American culture. Everyone's heard of it. And so to take it away would be pretty hard to do. I would say instead take advantage of it and to turn it into something that's more or less positive, as an avenue to learn truth.
So thanks again so much to Warren. I'm so grateful that I got to talk to him and hear his perspective and include that as part of this project, and it really helped me figure out how to continue this episode in a productive way and create a productive discussion. After the interview, we decided to stick around and check out the hiking trails.
I'm feeling very Blair Witch Project right now. Just me and my camera and the elements.
So we left Richmond the next day and went to go stay with my uncle who lives in Sterling, which is right outside of DC, and we filmed Colors of the Wind in a nature preserve.
Hi, we're here at Fraser Preserve and we're gonna film our Colors of the Wind music video.
Even though Pocahontas does have problematic elements, themes of environmental conservation are really prevalent in the movie, and I really wanted to honor that for Colors of the Wind.
Here we moved to this pretty park that we found with this here waterfall. Look at that, you guys. Oh my gosh.
It was a really fun shoot because even though it was February, it was really warm and we got to walk around the woods, and I really love hiking, so it was great.
Okay, so I climbed some rocks and I walked around some trails. And Colors of the Wind is done. We're gonna go see Black Panther now. Bye!
So that night we went to go see Black Panther, which was not part of the project. I just wanted to do that because I love Marvel movies and Disney owns all of my interests. But being that we were doing this episode, we got to see the way that Disney movies have progressed from the 90s to now, and the way that like representation has progressed, and I know that so many people of color work to make Black Panther happen, so like way to do better, Disney. On our last day in Virginia, we actually decided to leave Virginia and go to DC, where the Smithsonian's American Indian Museum is.
I'm gonna try to find stuff relevant to Pocahontas and her tribe.
The museum has this exhibit called What Do You Know About Pocahontas? And it's a video compilation of spoilers, people not knowing anything about Pocahontas except for the Disney movie. There's a big emphasis on a moment that John Smith actually recorded in which Pocahontas saved him from being sacrificed by her father. This is actually featured in the movie. It's a very kind of princessy, no, father, I love him kind of scene. He actually talked about this in his journal, but some historians think that either it didn't happen or he kind of just like misinterpreted a ceremony and was not actually in fact going to be sacrificed. It was a really cool, informative exhibit. If you're in the area, there's one in DC and there's also one in New York. So where does that leave us with this movie? Disney's Pocahontas is a strong woman who believes in environmental conservation, and Colors of the Wind and Just Around the River Bend are bops. Steady as the Beating Drum is also a bop. However, the lack of monkey perspective really doesn't give a voice to the people that it represents. And it's up to us to tell the full story, especially when talking to kids when we're talking about this movie. It's not the type of movie that Disney could remake comfortably, I would say, like they did with The Jungle Book or Beauty and the Beast. Disney princess stories are fairy tales, and Pocahontas' life was not that. But I'd be very interested to see how Disney would tell the story of a Native American princess, quote unquote, today. The Native American culture is so vast and varies depending on where you are. Their folklore is vast and their culture is vast. And if they were to bring in someone like Warren to consult, if they were to bring in Native American directors, actors, and writers, they would make a really cool movie, and I would love to see it. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked it and are excited to see where we go next, be sure to like and subscribe, and please share. Support our Patreon if you can, and comment below with what you think about Disney's Pocahontas. I'll see you next time. Bye.
The last time I was like hiking in like a nature preserve, I also sang Colors of the Wind, but just like for fun.